The Great Hall of the Galactic Council had never been so silent. Thousands of delegates from hundreds of worlds filled the colossal chamber, yet not a single voice dared break the stillness. Above them floated holographic banners of every member civilization. Beneath those banners stood the Velari. Alone, condemned. Their crystalline skin shimmered between pale blue and fading gray, the colors of grief and fear. At the center podium, the council speaker rose. His voice echoed like a sentence already carved into stone. The Velari have refused to assist in the war against the Void Swarm. They have refused to use their empathic gifts as weapons. Such refusal endangers every peaceful civilization in the galaxy. The chamber remained silent. No one protested. No one objected. The Galactic Council therefore declares the Velari guilty of dereliction of duty. Effective immediately, they are exiled from Council space. They will leave our territory and never return. The final word struck harder than any weapon. Exiled. Never return. Among the crowd stood Jiho, 28 cycles old. A historian. A dreamer. Someone who had spent his entire life believing the council represented justice. Peace. Unity. Now, as thousands watched his people being cast out, he realized how naive he had been. The council did not want peace. It wanted obedience. And when peace required courage, the council chose war. Beside him stood Yuna. For 3 years she had worked in military hospitals across council space. She had healed soldiers from dozens of species. Broken minds. Shattered bodies. Traumatized survivors. The council had awarded her medals for compassion. Today those same leaders were taking away her home. "This is wrong," she whispered. Her crystalline skin darkened into deep purple. The color of anger. Jiho stared at the council chamber. "I know." His voice trembled. "But they have already decided." 3 days later, 12,000 Velari were loaded onto aging colony ships. The council called it relocation. Everyone knew it was a death sentence. Their vessels were stripped of advanced navigation systems. Weapons were removed. Emergency supplies were reduced to the legal minimum. Even the star charts were decades out of date. The message was clear: leave and die quietly. As the fleet departed orbit, Jiho stood before a viewport and watched his world shrink into the darkness. His home, his childhood, his future, gone. Behind him, children cried. Parents pretended not to be afraid. No one believed their lies. The first month of exile was brutal. The ships were overcrowded. Food grew scarce. Recycling systems failed almost weekly. Every night echoed with frightened whispers. Every morning brought new problems. Still they searched for a home. Every station, every colony, every settlement. They begged. And every answer was the same: no. Some ignored them entirely. Others sent angry responses. One station commander transmitted a message that spread through the fleet like poison. "The council has spoken. You are criminals. We do not shelter criminals." Hope began to die. Jiho spent his days buried inside the ship's tiny library. Ancient maps, frontier records, exploration logs, anything that might reveal a safe haven. But the frontier offered nothing. Pirate territories, radiation storms, dead worlds, frozen wastelands. Every possibility ended in disaster. Meanwhile, Yuna fought a different battle. The medical bay overflowed with patients. Stress weakened immune systems. Children stopped eating. Parents stopped sleeping. Each day more names were added to the critical list. Yuna used her empathic healing until she could barely stand. She pushed herself beyond exhaustion, beyond reason, beyond safety. But even miracles have limits. 3 months into exile, a little girl named Sora died. She was only 4 cycles old. Her immune system collapsed. Yuna spent 36 hours trying to save her. She poured every ounce of strength she possessed into the child. It wasn't enough. The funeral took place in Cargo Bay 3. More than 200 people attended. Old songs echoed through the chamber. Voices cracked. Tears fell. Sora's mother never stopped crying. Jiho watched the ceremony and felt something inside himself break. For the first time since leaving home, he wondered if the council had been right. Maybe exile really was a slower form of execution. That night, Captain Hyan called an emergency meeting. The old captain looked 20 years older than he had 4 months earlier. Dark circles shadowed his eyes. His shoulders sagged beneath invisible weight. "We are running out of time." The room fell silent. "Our life support systems are failing. At current projections, we have 6 weeks before casualties begin increasing dramatically." No one spoke. No one needed to. They all understood. Find a world. Or die. The fleet navigator projected a star map. Most nearby systems were already crossed out. Explored. Rejected. Impossible. Only one remained. A small yellow star. Unremarkable. Forgotten. The file identified it as Sol. "There is a quarantine warning," the navigator said quietly. "Primitive civilization detected. Council law forbids contact." A bitter laugh escaped Yuna. "The council exiled us." She stood. Purple light rippled across her crystalline skin. "Their laws no longer protect us." Her gaze swept the room. "And their laws no longer bind us." Murmurs spread through the chamber. For the first time in months, people sounded alive. Captain Hyan slowly nodded. "Set course for Sol." He looked at the third planet. Blue. Green. Alive. "We will try Earth." 2 weeks later, the refugee fleet reached the edge of the system. Sensors detected radio broadcasts. Satellites. Orbital stations. A young civilization. Primitive by galactic standards. Yet astonishingly alive. As the fleet entered Earth's atmosphere, warning alarms erupted across every bridge. Human military forces had detected them. Jiho stared at the tactical display. Small aircraft were rising to intercept. Fighter jets. Ancient technology. Still dangerous. "We need to speak before they panic," Captain Hyan said. Jiho moved to the communications console. His hands trembled. What could he possibly say? How do you ask strangers to save an entire species? How do you explain despair? After several long moments, he began typing. The message was translated into every human language available. Then transmitted. "We come seeking mercy. We are refugees with nowhere else to go. Our children are dying. We ask only for the chance to live." The ships descended through the clouds. Below them stretched oceans, forests, mountains, and cities. A living world. A beautiful world. Perhaps their last chance. Jiho closed his eyes. For the first time in years, he prayed. Not for victory. Not for justice. Only mercy. The fighter jets circled overhead, but they did not fire. The refugee ships touched down in an empty field. Engines powered down. Silence followed. Then the Velari saw them. Humans. Soldiers standing in formation. Weapons ready. Waiting. Watching. Judging. Captain Hyan opened a communication channel. "This is the Velari refugee fleet." His voice cracked. "We request asylum." A pause. "We request permission to land." Another pause. Finally, "We request hope." Silence answered. 1 second. 10 seconds. 30. Then a voice emerged from the speakers. Human. Male. Speaking broken Velari. "Stay in ships." Another pause. "We talk soon." And then the words that made thousands burst into tears. "No shooting." Yuna collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Her crystalline skin turned brilliant gold, the color of relief. Around her, others cried too. It was not acceptance. Not yet. But it was not rejection. And after 4 months of darkness, that alone felt like a miracle. Junho listened and translated for the military commanders and UN officials. When Jiho finished, the room was quiet. A general spoke first. "How do we know this is not a trick? How do we know you are not scouts for an invasion?" Junho translated the question. Juho's response was simple. "You do not know. You must decide if you believe us. But please decide quickly." "We have 42 children in critical condition. They will die within days without help." Quote. The UN Secretary General called an emergency session. Representatives from every nation flew to New York. The debate was fierce. Some countries wanted to send the aliens away immediately. Russia and China worried about technology theft. Several African nations remembered colonialism and feared a new form of exploitation. Others saw opportunity or felt moral obligation. Ambassador Hana Choi from South Korea requested to speak. She was young for an ambassador, only 37, but she had a reputation for powerful speeches. The assembly hall went quiet. "My grandmother told me stories," Hana began. "She told me about the Korean War, when our country was destroyed. She told me about the refugee camps, about the hunger, about how the world sent help. Ships came with food and medicine. Soldiers came to protect us. Other countries took in our refugees. They did not have to help. Many of them were far away and had their own problems, but they helped anyway." She paused, looking around the room. "Now we are the ones with the power to help. These beings came to us because we are their last hope. Yes, we should be careful. Yes, we should protect ourselves. But if we turn them away, if we let their children die, what does that make us? When we finally go to the stars, what will we tell other species about this moment?" The vote took 6 hours. It was close. 97 nations voted yes. 82 voted no, and 15 abstained. But the yes votes had enough population and resources to make it work. Earth would grant asylum to the Valari. The ships were directed to 3 landing zones outside Perth in Australia, near Buenos Aires in Argentina, and in a valley outside Busan in South Korea. Each location was chosen for its space, climate, and the willingness of local governments to host the refugees. Junho was sent to the Busan site as the lead translator and liaison. He arrived before the Valari ships landed. The valley had been an empty field used for agriculture. Now it was filled with temporary shelters, medical tents, and supply depots. Thousands of volunteers had come to help. When the Valari emerged from their ships, Junho saw them for the first time in person. They were humanoid, but taller and thinner. Their skin was crystalline and translucent, shifting colors constantly. Right now, most of them were golden and yellow. Junho's database said those colors meant hope and relief. Yuna was one of the first to step out. She walked slowly, looking at everything with wide eyes. Junho approached her carefully. "Welcome to Earth. I am Junho. I will help you communicate with my people." Junho approached. Approached. Yuna's skin flickered to pink, which meant gratitude. "Thank you. Can we see the medical facilities? We have many sick." Junho took her to the medical tent. Human doctors and nurses were waiting. Yuna immediately began working, using her empathic abilities to diagnose patients. She would place her hands on a child and close her eyes. After a moment, she would tell the human doctors exactly what was wrong. The doctors were amazed. She could detect infections, internal injuries, and chemical imbalances without any equipment. By the end of the first day, all 42 critical children were stabilized. Yuna worked for 16 hours straight. When she finally stopped, she collapsed from exhaustion. Junho caught her before she hit the ground. Integration began slowly. The Valari were given basic supplies: food, water, clothing, shelter. Many things confused them. They had never seen rain before. Their homeworld had been terraformed centuries ago, with perfect weather control. When it rained the first night, hundreds of Valari stood outside, letting the water fall on them. Their skin turned bright orange with joy. Minho was a structural engineer from Seoul who volunteered to help build permanent housing. He worked with Valari engineers to design hybrid structures. The Valari taught him about energy-efficient materials and modular construction. He taught them about earthquakes and typhoons. Together they created buildings that were stronger than either species could have made alone. Sumen was a teacher from Buenos Aires who developed a cultural exchange program. Valari children attended classes with human children. The Valari learned Spanish, English, Korean, and other languages. They learned about Earth's history, geography, and cultures. Human children learned about the Galactic Council, other alien species, and Valari empathic communication. One day, a Valari child named Kira asked Suman a question. "Teacher, why do humans fight each other? You are all the same species. We do not understand." Suman thought carefully about how to answer. "That is a very good question, Kira. We fight because we are afraid. We are afraid of people who look different or believe different things. We are afraid of not having enough food or land or resources. But we are learning slowly. We are learning to be better. Do one. Kiro's skin turned blue with sadness. The council races all look different, but they still fought. Maybe fear is universal. Maybe, Suman said. But so is kindness. Jiho started a cultural exchange program with Junho. They recorded oral histories comparing Valari and human experiences. Jiho was fascinated by human art, especially music. Valari did not have music. Their empathic abilities meant they could share emotions directly. But when Junho played Beethoven's Ninth Symphony for him, Jiho wept. His skin cycled through a dozen colors. "This is beautiful," Jiho said. "You capture emotions and preserve them in sound. We lose our emotions when the moment passes. But you can make others feel what you felt even hundreds of years later." The two of them started collaborating. Jiho would share Valari memories through empathic touch, letting Junho actually feel the emotions and experiences of the Valari exodus. Junho would play music that matched those emotions. They recorded everything, creating a shared archive of both species' histories. Not everyone on Earth was happy about the Valari presence. Protests erupted in several cities. Some people believed the aliens were dangerous. Others worried about jobs and resources. Anti-alien groups formed, spreading conspiracy theories online. But something else was happening too. Videos of Valari children playing with human children went viral. A clip of a Valari elder trying Korean barbecue and his skin turning every color of the rainbow got 1 billion views. Stories of Yuna healing sick humans spread through social media. Public opinion slowly shifted. A poll showed that 63% of humans now supported the asylum decision. Then everything changed. 6 months after the Veil Arai arrived, a massive signal was detected from deep space. The message was in hundreds of languages, including human ones. It was from the Galactic Council, and they were coming to Earth. The medical clinic in Bususan became famous across the world. Yuna worked there every day, treating both humans and Valari. Her empathic healing abilities allowed her to sense diseases before symptoms appeared. She could feel the cancer growing in someone's lungs. She could detect heart problems weeks before a heart attack. She could calm panic attacks with a single touch. Human doctors studied her methods carefully. Dr. Park, the clinic director, worked closely with Yuna to understand how empathic healing worked. "I can feel the illness," Yuna explained. "It creates disturbance in the body's natural energy. I cannot cure everything, but I can guide human doctors to the exact problem." One morning, a woman named Unji brought her son Dihyun to the clinic. The boy was 8 years old and had been having terrible headaches. Human doctors had done many tests but found nothing. Yuna placed her hands on Dayton's head and closed her eyes. Her skin turned dark blue immediately. "There is a growth in his brain," she said quietly, "deep inside where your machines cannot see clearly. It is very serious." Unji felt her world collapse. Can you heal him?" "I cannot remove it," Yuna said honestly, "but I can map exactly where it is. I can guide surgeons. Human hands are steadier than mine for this kind of work." For 3 days, Yuna meditated beside Dahyun. She mapped every nerve pathway in his brain through empathic connection. She created a 3-dimensional mental image and transferred it to a computer system through careful description. Human surgeons studied the map. The tumor was in a place that made surgery nearly impossible. One wrong cut would leave Dune paralyzed or dead. Dr. Park assembled the best surgical team in South Korea. Yuna would be in the operating room providing real-time guidance through empathic sensing. The surgery lasted 11 hours. Yuna stood beside the surgeons, her hands hovering near Dahyun's head, feeling every movement of their instruments. "Left 2 millimeter. Stop. There is a blood vessel. Go around." The surgery was successful. Dahyun woke up 3 days later, weak but alive. When Unji saw Yuna in the hospital corridor, she dropped to her knees and hugged the Valari healer. Crying, Yuna's skin turned pink and gold, gratitude and joy mixing together. Unji became one of the loudest voices supporting the Valari. She attended every pro-carry rally. She argued with protesters. She wrote articles and gave interviews. "They saved my son," she would say. "How can anyone call them dangerous?" Meanwhile, Jiho continued his cultural exchange work with Junho. They had recorded hundreds of hours of interviews and empathic memory sharing. Junho introduced Jiho to Korean history. and Jiho was struck by the similarities between Korean and Valari experiences. Your people were invaded many times, Jiho said, reading about Korean history. You were occupied by Japan. Your country was split in two by outside powers. You understand what it means to lose your home? Yes, Junho said quietly. My grandparents lived through the war. They were refugees too. Maybe that is why Korea voted yes so strongly. Jiho wanted to experience Korean culture more deeply. Junho took him to Seoul, to the markets and temples and streets. Jiho tried tteokbokki and his skin turned bright orange. He visited Gyeongbokgung Palace and turned purple with awe. He went to a noraebang, a karaoke room, and listened to Junho sing. Afterward, Jiho asked to try. Valari did not have vocal music, but Jiho attempted to sing a simple children's song. His voice was strange, slightly off-key, but the emotion was pure. Why are you crying? Jiho asked, concerned. Because you are trying so hard to understand us, Junho said. Because you respect our culture, even though your technology is hundreds of years ahead of ours. Technology does not make a culture superior, Jiho replied. The council had great technology. They also had great cruelty. You have less technology, but more kindness. I know which I prefer. In Argentina, similar bonds were forming. Valari children and human children played together. After school, they invented new games that mixed human sports and Valari empathic challenges. A human teenager named Luis taught a group of very teens how to play soccer. The Valari struggled at first. Their empathic abilities made them too aware of other players' intentions, but they learned to control it, and soon they were playing competitively. A video of a mixed human Valari soccer match went viral. The Valari players' skin changed colors with every emotion. Orange when they scored, blue when they lost possession, green with determination, pink with excitement. The comment sections filled with people saying it was the most beautiful sports match they had ever seen. Minho finished the first permanent Valari settlement outside Bususan. It was a hybrid design that looked alien but felt welcoming. The buildings used Valari energy systems but Korean architectural principles. Gardens mixed earth plants and Valari plants brought from their ships. A central plaza featured a monument, a human hand, and a Valari hand clasped together. At the settlement's opening ceremony, thousands of people attended, both human and Valari. Captain Hun gave a speech. 6 months ago, we arrived here expecting to die. You gave us life instead. You gave us hope. We will never forget this kindness. We will spend our lives trying to deserve it. Labor. We will never forget labor. But not all humans accepted the Varie. Anti-alien groups grew larger and more vocal. In North America, a group called Humanity first organized protests outside Valari settlements. They claimed the aliens were taking human jobs and resources. They spread false stories about Valari, using mind control on humans. Violence erupted in Chicago. A group of protesters attacked a Valari family walking home from a market. The father was beaten badly. The mother shielded their children with her body. Human bystanders intervened, protecting the Valari family until police arrived. 3 humans were hospitalized. The Valari father nearly died. Yuna flew to Chicago to treat the injured. She healed both the Valari father and the humans who had protected him. When reporters asked her about the attackers, she said something that was quoted around the world. They are afraid. Fear makes people cruel. But more humans protected us than attacked us. That is what I choose to remember. The incident shocked many humans. Counter-protests erupted in support of the Valari. Even some who had been uncertain about the aliens now spoke out against the violence. Public opinion polls showed support for the Valari, rising to 71%. Then came the transmission from deep space. Every radio telescope on Earth picked it up simultaneously. The message was in hundreds of languages, including English, Chinese, Spanish, Arabic, and Korean. It was also in Valari. This is the Galactic Council. We are aware that the primitive species of Sol 3, which you call Earth, is harboring Valari criminals. These criminals were exiled for crimes against galactic security. We demand their immediate return. If you comply, Earth will be considered for eventual Council membership. If you refuse, Earth will be quarantined and prohibited from space travel. You have 30 days to decide. Choose wisely. The transmission ended. Junho translated it for government officials. Junho listened with growing horror. They found us, he said, his skin turning gray with fear. I am so sorry. We have brought danger to your world. No, Junho said firmly. You brought the danger to our attention. Now we know what is out there. Now we can prepare. The UN convened emergency sessions. Every nation sent representatives. The debates were fierce. Some countries wanted to hand over the Valari to avoid conflict. Others refused to negotiate with what they saw as galactic bullies. Military analysts warned that Earth's technology was no match for the Council's. Scientists argued that surrendering would make Earth look weak. Ambassador Hana Choi requested to speak again. The assembly hall was packed. Cameras broadcast her speech to billions of people worldwide. The Council calls the Valari criminals. She said their crime was refusing to kill. Their crime was choosing peace. If we hand them over, we tell the galaxy that Earth agrees with this judgment. We tell them that we value access to their trade routes more than we value innocent lives. We tell them that we can be bullied. She paused, looking directly into the cameras. But if we refuse, we tell them something different. We tell them that Earth stands for something, that humanity will not abandon those who trust us. Yes, there will be consequences. Yes, we might face sanctions or worse. But some things are worth the cost. Some things define who we are. The vote took place at midnight Geneva time. The world watched. 147 nations voted no to the Council's demands. 32 voted yes. 15 abstained. Earth's answer would be refusal. The message was sent to the Council. The Valari are under Earth's protection. They will not be surrendered. We await your response. 3 days later, sensors detected a fleet entering the solar system. 30 warships. Council flags heading toward Earth. The Council fleet arrived in Earth's orbit like a storm cloud. 30 warships, each larger than anything humanity had ever built. They took positions around the planet. Weapons systems clearly visible. Every military base on Earth went to high alert. Fighter jets launched. Submarines surfaced. Nuclear arsenals were made ready. Though everyone knew they would be useless against such advanced technology, a transmission came through. The face that appeared on screens worldwide was not human, or anything like human. It was a Thoran, a species from a high-gravity world. Its body was covered in thick armor plating. Its eyes were cold and black. When it spoke, its voice was translated by computer systems. I am Commander Vex of the Thorian hierarchy, speaking for the Galactic Council. We have come to retrieve the Valari criminals and to address Earth's defiance. Your leaders will attend a hearing at the United Nations. Attendance is not optional. The hearing was scheduled for the next day. Commander Vex's shuttle descended to UN headquarters in New York. His honor guard of Thorian soldiers marched through the building, their heavy footsteps echoing. They wore full battle armor and carried weapons that hummed with power. The message was clear. Earth was outmatched. The General Assembly Hall was filled. Every nation sent representatives. Valari leaders including Jiho and Captain Hun sat in a special section. Human military commanders lined the walls. Junho stood nearby as translator, though the Council had provided universal translation devices. Commander Vex stood at the central podium, towering over everyone. He looked at the assembled humans with clear contempt. You are children, he began. You play with nuclear weapons and chemical propulsion. You have not mastered your own planet, yet you presume to challenge the Council. This is foolish. Ambassador Hana stood up. We are not challenging the Council. We are protecting refugees who asked for our help. This is a basic right of any civilization. The Valari are not refugees. They are criminals. Vex replied. They refused to aid in the war against the Void Swarm. Their refusal cost millions of lives. They chose their pacifism over the survival of entire worlds. Jiho stood up, his skin turning purple with anger. That is a lie. The Council wanted us to weaponize empathic abilities. They wanted us to drive enemy soldiers insane, to break their minds, to turn them into weapons against their own people. We refused, because that is not healing. That is torture. We offered to heal wounded soldiers, to provide medical support, to help with evacuation. The Council said that was not enough. They wanted us to be killers. Vex's expression did not change. War requires difficult choices. The Council made those choices. You did not. And now Earth harbors you. This cannot stand. Why? The question came from an unexpected source. Dr. Park, the human doctor who worked with Yuna, had requested permission to speak. Why does it matter if Earth gives them sanctuary? The galaxy is enormous. Why do you care about 12,000 beings on one primitive planet? Vex turned to face Park. Because it sets a precedent. If Earth can defy the Council without consequences, others will follow. The Council's authority must be absolute. So this is about power, Park said. Not justice, not security. Power. All government is about power, Vex replied. The Council maintains order in the galaxy. Order requires obedience. Vexication. Vexication. Ambassador Hana spoke again. And what happens if we refuse? Will you attack Earth? Kill billions of humans to retrieve 12,000 Valari. We will quarantine your system, Vex said. No ships will enter or leave. Your species will remain trapped on this planet forever. You will never reach the stars. Your civilization will stagnate and eventually collapse. All because you chose to protect criminals. The room erupted in argument. Representatives shouted at each other in dozens of languages. Some demanded that the Valari be handed over immediately. Others refused to negotiate. Under threats, military commanders whispered urgently about defense options. Junho watched Jiho, who sat with his head in his hands, skin gray with despair. He walked over and sat beside him. We will find a way, Junho said quietly. How? Junho said quietly. How? Juho asked. We brought this on you. We should leave. We should surrender to the Council. Your species should not suffer for us. We already voted, Junho said firmly. Earth made its choice. We do not abandon our friends because of threats. The hearing ended with no resolution. Commander Vex gave Earth 7 days to reconsider. Then the quarantine would begin. The Council fleet would destroy any ship that attempted to leave Earth's atmosphere. Any satellite that transmitted beyond the moon would be disabled. Earth would be cut off. 231% at Opto. That night, humanity mobilized for war. Not because they wanted war, but because they refused to surrender. Every nation contributed what they could. The United States, Russia, and China shared military technology for the first time in decades. The European Union opened its defense research to the world. Japan, South Korea, and India contributed advanced electronics and satellite systems. Valari engineers worked around the clock with human scientists. They shared what technology they could from their stripped-down ships. It was not much the Council had made sure of that, but it was more than humanity had before. Energy shields, basic plasma weapons, improved radar and communication systems. Taeyang was a fighter pilot in the South Korean Air Force. He had 10 years of experience and hundreds of flight hours. Now he sat in a simulator, training against scenarios created by VRE military advisors. The simulations showed Council battle tactics, how they flew in formation, how they targeted enemy ships, how they used gravity weapons to tear ships apart. You cannot fight them directly, the Valari advisor explained. Their shields are too strong, but shields have weaknesses. They must be adjusted constantly or they create gaps. If you can move fast enough, unpredictably enough, you might get through. Taeyang practiced for 12 hours a day. Other pilots did the same at bases around the world. They knew it was probably hopeless. Council fighters were faster, stronger, better armed. But humans had one advantage: desperation. They were fighting for their home. The Council soldiers were just following orders. Nari was a cybersecurity expert in Seoul. She had worked in digital defense for the South Korean government. Now she led a team trying to understand Council computer systems. The Valari provided what information they could, but they were not warriors. They knew basic security protocols, but not military hacking techniques. The Council uses quantum encrypted communications. Nari explained to her team. We cannot break the encryption, but we might be able to disrupt it. If we can jam their communications, their ships cannot coordinate. They become individual targets instead of a fleet. Her team worked on jamming technology, using a combination of human creativity and VRE technical knowledge. It was a long shot, but it was something. Meanwhile, Jiho spent his days in the UN archives, studying everything humans had recorded about the Council. The information was limited. Humanity had only detected Council transmissions for a few decades. But there were patterns. The Council had existed for thousands of years. It had started as a defensive alliance against a great threat. Over time, it had become an empire. Jiho found something interesting in old Council transmissions. The Council's founding charter, transmitted openly centuries ago as propaganda, declared that the Council existed to protect peace through strength and unity. But recent Council actions contradicted those principles. The war against the Void Swarm had been started by the Council, not the swarm. The Council had expanded aggressively into neutral space. They had subjugated smaller species. The Council has become what it was created to fight, Jiho told Junho. They were supposed to prevent tyranny. Now they are tyrants. Can we use this? Junho asked. Maybe, Juho said thoughtfully. If we can prove the Council has violated its own founding principles, it might turn member species against them. But we need evidence, not old transmissions. Real evidence. Recent crimes. Documentation. Where would that evidence be on the flagship? Jiho said in the command ship's database. Every Council decision, every military order, every crime, it would all be recorded there. They document everything for their archives. Juho stared at him. You want to break into the flagship? That is insane. Yes, Joe agreed. But it might be our only chance. The plan was desperate, and probably suicidal. A small team would infiltrate the Council flagship using a captured reconnaissance probe that had been orbiting Earth. They would hack the database, download evidence of Council crimes, and broadcast it to every species in the galaxy. If enough species saw the truth, they might turn against the Council. The fleet might withdraw. Ambassador Hana approved the mission. She knew it was unlikely to succeed, but doing nothing guaranteed failure. The question was, who would go? Junho volunteered immediately. He was the best translator humanity had. Taeyang volunteered because he was the best pilot. Yuna insisted on coming because her empathic abilities could sense guards and help navigate the ship. Minho volunteered to pilot the insertion craft. Jiho would coordinate from Earth, providing information about Council ship layouts. The team had 5 days to prepare, 5 days to learn how to operate alien technology, 5 days to practice a mission that would likely kill them all, 5 days before Earth's answer was due. On the last night, Junho met with Jiho in the Busosan settlement. They sat under Earth's moon drinking tea. If I do not come back, Junho said, tell my parents I loved them. You will come back, Junho said. His skin flickered between colors. Hope, fear, determination. You must. Because when you return with that evidence, you will change the galaxy. Not just for Vari, for everyone. Junho smiled. No pressure. Then they sat in silence, watching the stars. Up there, 30 warships waited, and somewhere beyond them, the truth waited to be found. The captured reconnaissance probe floated in low Earth orbit. It had been studying Earth for weeks before human satellites disabled it. Now Minho sat in its pilot seat, his hands shaking as he touched alien controls. Vieri engineers had modified the probe to carry 4 people. The modifications were crude but functional. Probably. Are you ready? Jiho's voice came through the communication system. He was in the command center in Bususan coordinating the mission. No, Minho admitted, but we are going anyway. Beside him sat Junho, Taeyang, and Yuna. Each wore a spacesuit modified with Valari technology. They carried weapons, though none of them were soldiers. They carried data storage devices, and they carried the hopes of 2 species. Launching in 10 seconds, Minho said his voice was steady despite his fear. The probe detached from its orbital platform and began moving toward the Council fleet. It transmitted Council identification codes that Valari engineers had extracted from its memory to the flagship's sensors. It would appear to be returning from its reconnaissance mission. The journey took 20 minutes. 20 minutes of silence as they approached ships that could destroy them with a single shot. 20 minutes of watching the flagship grow larger and larger until it filled their viewport. A massive vessel 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons and armor. Docking port identified. Minho said, taking us in. The probe slipped into a docking bay designed for small reconnaissance craft. Magnetic clamps engaged. The bay doors closed behind them. They were inside. Yuna closed her eyes, extending her empathic senses through the ship. I feel many beings, soldiers everywhere, but the bay is empty right now. We have maybe 2 minutes. They moved quickly. The airlock opened. They stepped onto a Council warship. The corridor was huge, designed for species much larger than humans. Everything was metal and harsh angles. Lighting came from panels that glowed cold blue. Junho pulled out a map that Jiho had created from Vieri memory. The central archive is 15 levels up. We need to reach the command section. They moved through the ship like ghosts. Yuna warned them when guards approached. They hid in storage rooms and maintenance tunnels. The ship was a maze of corridors, and every turn could lead to discovery. After 30 minutes, they reached a major obstacle. The command section was behind a security checkpoint. Armed Thorian guards stood watch. There was no way around them. "We need a distraction," Taeyang said. Minho looked at a wall panel. "I can trigger a false alarm in the lower decks. Maintenance emergency. It might pull some guards away." He accessed the panel using tools Vale Ari engineers had provided. Alarms began blaring, 3 levels below. Half the guards left their posts, moving to respond, but 2 remained. "I will handle this," Yuna said. She walked toward the guards calmly. Her skin shifted to colors that meant peace and calm. The guards saw her and raised their weapons. "I am Valari," she said in the council's common language. "I surrender. I wish to return to my people. Please, I am lost." The guards looked at each other confused. One spoke into a communication device. While they were distracted, Taeyang moved silently behind them. He used a stun weapon modified by human and Valari engineers. Both guards collapsed. "That was terrifying," Yuna said, her skin turning gray. They moved past the checkpoint, into the command section. The corridors here were cleaner, more elaborate. Officers passed by occasionally, and the team had to hide multiple times. Junho's heart pounded so hard he thought it would give them away. Finally, they reached the central archive. The door was locked with quantum encryption. Minho pulled out a device that Nari's team had built. It could not break the encryption, but it could scramble the lock mechanism. The door opened. The archive room was enormous. Thousands of data storage devices lined the walls, glowing with information. This was the Council's memory, every decision, every military action, every secret. For thousands of years, Junho connected their storage device to the central terminal. Jiho's voice came through their communications. "I am accessing the system remotely, looking for incriminating evidence. This will take a few minutes." Those minutes felt like hours. Yuna stood by the door, sensing approaching beings. Taeyang and Minho watched the corridors. Junho monitored the download progress. 10%, 20%, 30%. "Guards coming?" Yuna whispered urgently. Many of them. How long?" Minho asked. 2 minutes. Maybe less. "Download at 60%, Junho reported. "We need more time." Taeyang looked at Minho. They both knew what had to be done. "Go," Taeyang said. "Take Junho and Yuna. Get that data out. I will hold them here." "You cannot fight them alone," Minho protested. "I do not need to win," Taeyang said. "I just need to buy time. Now go." He stepped into the corridor. Weapon ready, Minho, Junho, and Yuna ran in the opposite direction. Behind them, they heard plasma fire and shouting. Taeyang was fighting. 90%, Jiho's voice said through the comm. Almost there. They reached the docking bay. Alarms were blaring throughout the ship now. The whole fleet knew there were intruders. Minho started the prob's engines, while Junho secured the data device. Yuna watched the bay entrance, tears running down her face. Her skin was gray and blue, grief and fear. 100%, Jiho said. "Data acquired. Get out of there." 1. The probe launched from the docking bay just as Thorian soldiers entered. Plasma bolts struck the probe's shields. Warning lights flashed, but Minho flew like he was possessed, dodging and weaving through the Council fleet. Fighter ships launched to pursue them. "Transmitting data now," Jiho said from Earth, broadcasting to every listening post in the galaxy. The information spread like light through the darkness. Every species with radio telescopes received it. The Council's crimes were laid bare for all to see. False flag operations that started wars, assassination of peaceful leaders, subjugation of weaker species, theft of resources, torture, mass murder. Thousands of crimes committed over centuries, all documented in the Council's own records. The probe raced toward Earth with fighters in pursuit. Minho pushed the engines beyond their limits. The Earth Defense Fleet launched to meet them 100 human fighters against 2 Council interceptors. It should have been no contest, but the human pilots flew with something the Council pilots did not have: absolute determination. They swarmed the interceptors like angry bees, attacking from every angle. Their weapons barely scratched the Council shields, but they kept attacking. One human fighter rammed an interceptor, sacrificing himself to disable its engines. The probe made it through Earth's atmosphere. Minho crashed it in the ocean near Bususan. Recovery ships pulled them out within minutes. Junho, Minho, and Yuna were alive, but Taeyang was still on the flagship. In orbit, something remarkable happened. The Council fleet received messages from their home worlds. Species that had been silent for centuries suddenly spoke out. Council member races began demanding answers. Why had they not been told about these crimes? Why had the council become the very thing it swore to fight against? Commander Vex received orders from 3 separate member species to stand down. Then 5, then 20. The council was fragmenting. Species were withdrawing their support. Ships began leaving the fleet, returning to their home worlds. A transmission came from the flagship. Commander Vex appeared on screens worldwide. He looked tired. Earth has revealed information that my government considers classified. My orders are to retrieve this information and the beings responsible. However, 27 council member species have withdrawn their support for this mission. Without their backing, I cannot proceed. The fleet will withdraw. What about our pilot? Ambassador Hana demanded. You have a human prisoner. Return him. There was a long pause. Then Vex said something unexpected. Your pilot fought well. He disabled 12 of my guards before being subdued. He showed courage. He will be returned to you. The transmission ended. A shuttle launched from the flagship. It descended to Earth and landed at UN headquarters. Taiyang emerged, bruised and limping, but alive. He was greeted as a hero. The Council fleet left Earth's orbit. They did not retreat quickly or shamefully. They left with military precision, maintaining formation. But they left. Earth was free. In the weeks that followed, the galaxy changed. The Galactic Council did not collapse immediately, but its authority was broken. Species began forming new alliances based on cooperation rather than domination. Several races reached out to Earth, offering friendship and trade. The Valari were no longer exiles. They were citizens of Earth, with full rights and protections. The settlements outside Bususan, Buenos Aires and Perth became permanent cities where humans and Valari lived together. Jiho and Junho published their work, a comprehensive history of both species told through empathic memories and human scholarship. It became required reading on 40 worlds. Yuna opened a medical school in Busosan, training both human and Viri healers. On graduation day, Dehyun, now a young doctor himself, gave a speech about how healing crosses all boundaries. Taiyang received medals from a dozen countries, but he said the proudest moment of his life was not the battle. It was when a young Valari child asked him why he had risked his life. Because you are one of us now, he had answered. We protect our own. 10 years after first contact, a monument was unveiled on the hillside outside Bususan. It showed a human hand and a Valari hand, clasped together. The inscription was written in every human language and Valari script. They were exiled by the galaxy, but Earth embraced them in, and in doing so, we learned what it truly means to be human. Ambassador Hana stood at the unveiling ceremony. Now, the first human ambassador to the new Galactic Federation. Beside her stood Jiho, who served as cultural liaison. In the crowd were Junho and Yuna, Minho and his family, Unji and Daewon, and thousands of others, human and Valari, living proof that kindness could change the galaxy. Hana gave a speech, her words broadcast to hundreds of worlds. 10 years ago, we made a choice. We could have chosen safety. We could have chosen to protect ourselves. But we chose something harder and more important. We chose to be the species that helps. And that choice changed everything. She paused, looking at the monument. The stars are no longer unreachable. They are home to friends and allies. And every time someone asks what humanity stands for, we will point to this moment. We will point to the day we said that refugees are welcome here, that peace is stronger than war, that kindness matters more than power. The crowd cheered. Children played together at the base of the monument, human and Valari, their laughter mixing in the air. Above them, ships from a dozen worlds crossed the sky, no longer threats, but visitors and partners. Earth had stood firm, and in standing, it had shown the galaxy what true strength looked like. Not weapons or threats, not domination or fear, but the simple revolutionary act of opening your arms to someone who has nowhere else to go. The galaxy had changed, and it had changed because one small primitive planet decided that mercy mattered more than power, that some things are worth fighting for, and that the measure of a civilization is not its technology or its military might, but how it treats those who cannot defend themselves. The Valari had been exiled by the galaxy, but Earth had embraced them, and in that embrace, both species had found something precious. Hope for a future where kindness was not weakness. where peace was possible, and where the stars belonged to all who looked up at them with wonder.